To everybody that I'm doing this by Zoom today, but unfortunately there was a fire at the local airport in St. John's on Friday night, and it put the kibosh to a lot of flights getting out, so I don't get out till later this evening. Well, welcome to meeting number 59 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. This meeting is taking place, of course, in a hybrid format pursuant to House Order of June 23rd, 2022. For the first hour of today's meeting, we will be studying the subject matter of Supplementary Estimates C. We will then proceed to study the main estimates during the second and final hour. Before we begin, I would like to welcome our guests, starting with the Honourable Joyce Murray, Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard. The Honourable Minister is joined today by officials from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. We'll start with Annette Gibbons, Deputy Minister, Mario Pelletier, Commissioner, Canadian Coast Guard, Richard Goodyear, Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Deputy Minister, and Neil O'Day, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister to Strategic Policy, will be joining us for the second hour. And thank you all for taking the time to appear before committee today. We'll start off, of course, with the Minister, who will do a 5-minute opening statement to start our study of Supplementary Estimate C. When you're ready, Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking to have a working earpiece here. Okay, that's good. I've got it. Thank you. Good morning. I'm pleased to be here on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, and I'm happy to be joined by Deputy Minister Annette Gibbons, Commissioner of the Canadian Coast Guard Mario Pelletier, and Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Deputy Minister Richard Goodyear. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, today I'm appearing before the committee to present the 2023-24 main estimates. On behalf of Fisheries and Oceans Canada and the Canadian Coast Guard.
Providing an overview of some key items and then provide more detail where possible. So following that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Mr. Chair, in the Supplementary Estimate C, I'm seeking $104.2 million for a number of important items. And this includes $52.2 million for increased marine and aviation fuel costs for the Canadian Coast Guard, $22.6 million for a litigation settlement, and $9.7 million from the $100 million committed to the Small Craft Harbours Fund and the Ghost Gear Fund, which is for cleaning up and recovering lost and abandoned fishing gear and for recovery efforts for essential harbours affected by Hurricane Fiona. Canadians have faced a particularly challenging year. The cost of running Canadian Coast Guard ships and helicopters has increased due to the international pressures on inflation and increased fuel costs. This isn't something we could predict, nor is it an expense we can afford to cut corners on. So mariners, coastal and Indigenous communities and all Canadians rely on the Canadian Coast Guard to help them and their waters stay safe and clean. L'année dernière, l'ouragan.
Last year, Hurricane Fiona was one of the most devastating storms in Canada and in eastern Quebec, which makes it even clearer that climate change is having real effects on coastal communities. This is a new reality that we all need to adapt to.
130 small craft harbors, splintering infrastructure and scattering fishing gear throughout local waters. Last October, I visited Covid Harbor in PEI and saw some of this damage firsthand. I heard directly from fish harvesters and those who live in coastal communities about the impact of Fiona on their livelihoods. I saw the destroyed oyster and mussel infrastructure. So it's incumbent upon our government to help clean up this overwhelming damage. And Mr. Chair, we were also required this year to settle a lawsuit related to past decisions in the amount of $22.6 million. There's a non-disclosure clause in the settlement agreement, so I won't be able to provide more information on this. Mr. Chair, the funding I'm seeking through the Supplementary Estimate C is essential to continue our work protecting Canada's mariners and our marine environment. As well, it will ensure that my department can fulfill its mandate for all Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now go to questions from the members of the committee. First, we'll start off with Mr. Small for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, I'm sure you've been made aware that there's going to be a very challenging year ahead in Atlantic Canada in the fishery, especially due to negative signals in the snow crab industry. So last year you committed to me several times, including at committee of the whole, that the trawl survey for northern cod this year would be going ahead, and that crucial information would be there to be used in the stock assessment. Will you supplement this missing piece of data by placing extra weight on the catch data submitted by fish harvesters and observers this year in the setting of that quota?
Well, thanks for the question. And we do make decisions based on best available science. That science includes the experience of fish harvesters, Indigenous knowledge, the catch per effort data, as well as the science that's done by my ministry. So we'll continue to make decisions based on science, and we'll be providing TAC according to what is sustainable.
So the per unit catch data for northern cod, according to Mustad, who's very experienced in cod fisheries in the Autoline segment, the catch rates in the North Atlantic are nowhere near. The average is nowhere near what fishers in Newfoundland and Labrador have experienced this year. So, based on that data, if a very conservative exploitation rate of 4% is desired by most industry stakeholders that I've talked to, will you commit to doubling the northern cod quota this year in light of what fishermen are faced with in the Atlantic snow crab?
Well, I'll commit to a quota that is based on best available science. And as I said, that when there is not the comparative trawling, we will be looking at the other data points that we utilize in combination with that as we make our decision.
So given that we haven't had that trawl data since 2019, and we've had catch data, the per unit catch data shows quite the rebound in northern cod, are you telling us that there's a good chance that you'll increase the northern cod quota this year?
Well, firstly, I do understand the importance of these fisheries to coastal communities, fish harvesters and processors, absolutely. And the fundamental approach is a precautionary one, and it is based on the best available science. So we'll be establishing a quota for that stock in due course, and it will be founded on those things.
Thank you, Minister. So this is another thing. You're very familiar with this topic. Much of last year's Atlantic snow crab sits in inventory, and the outlook for that industry, as I just pointed out, is grim. The U.S. sanctioned Russian snow crab over the war in Ukraine. What have you done together with the Trade Minister and the Minister of Global Affairs to pressure Japan and South Korea to follow suit and stop buying from Russia when Canada has more than enough crab to fill these markets?
Well, thanks for the question. And as we both agree, Canada is known for its sustainable, ethical, and premium quality fish and seafood. and that's thanks to hardworking fish harvesters. I have raised this matter personally twice with the ambassador from Japan to Canada. In fact, once at his residence at a reception. We are taking a Team Canada approach because I know other ministers, like the Trade Minister, are raising this as well, working closely with the industry and Atlantic provinces. And we will stand up for our fish harvesters and our fishing industry and help export our top quality products around the world.
Okay, so the Atlantic Canadian fishing industry is counting on you, Minister. Last year, you announced a wild Atlantic salmon conservation strategy. Since we're here on estimates, what funding have you asked for to fund this program?
Well, thanks for that. And yes, wild Atlantic salmon are hugely important, and it is our job collectively as a society and mine as a minister to work to restore the abundance of wild Atlantic salmon. They're iconic, and we want to help the stock recover and grow. The Atlantic Salmon Restoration Fund, the Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Fund, is providing over $5 million over the next 5 years for salmon restoration activities, including in Newfoundland with the Atlantic Salmon Foundation. And I must say that there are so many organizations and individuals that are committed to Atlantic salmon recovery that I look forward to working with them as well so that we amplify the impacts of the funding that we're providing.
Thank you, Minister. Last year, salmon anglers in Newfoundland, Labrador asked for a much expanded River Guardian program. You gave them 1/4 of what they asked for. So when poaching is a major issue on our rivers, why did you only give them 1/4 of the enforcement on the rivers? If you're going to follow this policy that you allegedly have here, why don't you give the salmon stakeholders what they want in terms of enforcement on the river? Don't you think that's where we have to start first?
Well, thanks for raising
Sorry,
Indigenous
Mr.
Guardian programs, which are...
Your time is up.
Yeah.
Minister, if you could provide an answer in writing if it doesn't get a chance to be answered throughout the questioning, but we're gone over the allotted time for Mr. Small. We'll now go to Mr. Morrissey for 6 minutes or less.
Chair, welcome, Madam Minister, and I want to begin by quoting a former fishery minister from Newfoundland, Honourable John Crosbie, who made the same statement that as minister he hoped to get the decisions right for the livelihood and future livelihood of fishers. That was just months before he closed the Atlantic cod fishery in 1992. So yes, it's extremely important that ministers get decisions right for the future of the fishery that we so depend on. My first question briefly is, you referenced Hurricane Fiona. I had raised with you the possibility of utilizing port authorities more to roll out funding, repair funding for their harbors. Could you comment on that? Has there been any progress made on that?
Well, absolutely, and thanks for that question, because that was seized our imaginations and our empathy over the course of that hurricane. Approximately 185 small craft harbors were in the path of the hurricane, and of those, many were impacted. DFO officials immediately were in contact with the harbor authorities and went out to assess the damage and began the task of determining the priorities to repair and rebuild. We announced $100 million for Fiona for support for the critical immediate work to repair, as well as to pull abandoned or gear that was washed into the oceans and creates a risk, and to recover that gear. So we've also worked very closely with provincial partners on this, and we'll continue this work. About 10% of that funding was spent in the last fiscal year.
Thank you, Minister, and it's important that we get that out as quickly as possible to get this vital infrastructure repaired and protected. Minister, you made reference to in your comments about cutting corners in the department, and you were providing funding to ensure that it didn't have to be. One area that I've heard a growing level of concern with fishers over the last number of months is in the area of illegal fishing. One of the best managed fisheries in Canada is the Atlantic lobster fishery, and the record speaks for itself. If all fisheries were as strong as it and well managed, we'd have a very prosperous East Coast, both the lobster as well as the crab. But my question to you is, in the area of illegal fishing, and I'm going to be candid, illegal fishing where it comes to commercial as well as indigenous fishers, what is the department's position, and how are you growing the ability of the department to enforce protection in this critical fishery? And it's across the board. Illegal is illegal, and the department should be using every steps that it has to enforce this and control it. Could you comment, Minister?
Yes, thank you for that question. Conservation is, of course, the primary principle for the management of fisheries, because if we don't conserve fish, we know what happens, and it's not, it undermines the fish and seafood sector in the future. So conservation is very important, and we have compliance and protection officers that are hired to enforce the regulations and the Fisheries Act for all harvesters. Any unauthorized fishing activity may be subject to enforcement action, and that's domestic and international alike. Because I do want to mention that there is a serious concern around illegal and unreported and unregulated fishing, which hurts legitimate fisheries and takes place in the high seas. So we work on that element as well with global partners. But here in Canada, we work in coordination with municipal and provincial compliance and enforcement officers to make sure that we're as effective as possible in DFO in doing that work.
How has the department added to its protection enforcement capacity over the last period of time?
Well, I'll turn that over to one of the officials in terms of adding to CNP budgets.
I'm not sure that we've had a specific increase in recent years, but we certainly ensure that we prioritize where our offices are in line with fisheries that are open. We're also, we work with communities to provide information to us as well. We certainly are very seized with making sure that we're well aware of what's happening on the water.
In the area of compliance, fishery compliance officers, could you provide to the committee what that capacity is, the number of compliance officers you have today, and is the department plans to increase its capacity in that area?
To provide that in writing, the answer of the exact number of compliance and enforcement officers. But what I can say is that as soon after being appointed, I worked with the ministry to make sure that we could leverage the work that our CNP officers are doing by coordinating and collaborating with other federal compliance and enforcement members like our CNP, as well as provincial and local compliance and enforcement officials, so that collectively the effectiveness would be as great as possible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morrissey. We'll go on now to Madame Debienne for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Madam Minister. Thank you for being with us, and welcome to the other witnesses as well. Let me begin by asking, it's a study that's upcoming for us in the subcommittee. When it comes to the departmental budget officers, reviews of the control agreements that 30% of the permits do not really respect regulations of the licenses. So how is it that your department can fund and quickly address this issue before private investors and vertically integrated commercial groups take strategic control of all licenses?
Turn it over to the officials to answer that.
Let me just make sure I've understood the question fully. So this is licenses, fishing license, who is the owner of them, you mean? Yes, over 30% of licenses do not respect official regulations. I mean, when it comes to investigating majority control over licenses, majority interest. So our concern is that vertically integrated commercial groups could corner the resources without respecting the regulations that we've set up. So we are told that 30% of licenses are at issue now. 30% of activities don't respect the regulations. I'm not sure where that 30% figure comes from. I know that we do carry out investigations, and we do have a number of questions about controlling interest because there are regulations. That's Department of Fisheries and Oceans 2022. All right. Just to add then that we are carrying out investigations, and we do have a number of questions about the current levels of control of licenses, and we are carrying out lawsuits in this regard, so it's ongoing work. It's of concern to us. Regulations came in a couple of years ago to ensure us and ensure all citizens that fish harvesters, local fish harvesters, will have access to quota when they fish it themselves without renting out their licenses to others. All right, so continuing on the matter of fishers, fish harvesters, it seems that there is a surplus amount. Could the surpluses have been used to compensate fishers who've been penalized by the closure of many of the fish seasons and fishing seasons, rather than they're having to move to other jobs? Couldn't they have been supported with some of the excess funds in the department? Well, this is an important issue. I went to Eastern Quebec to discuss support for fish harvesters who were affected by a decision that was taken to close the some specific fisheries. And I understand that they now have access and ensured that they had access to some of the crab quota for that zone. And this will help them to be able to fish during the season, having lost the yellow and red flounder quotas. All right, so these are people who are really affected by this. Some have even sold their vessels. And given that there is still some funds in the fishing fund, couldn't there be some of that set aside to compensate fish harvesters who were affected by closures so we could avoid this type of distress in future? All right, if I've understood correctly, you've asked us to use some of the funding in the fish funds to help fishers in this situation who are facing closures due to stock issues. Yes, that's my question. All right, those funds are specifically earmarked for restoring fisheries and to help improve the efficiency of processing in this sector, thanks to new innovations to help the sector move forward. There is no special amount set aside to compensate fishers affected by closures. During the cod closures, there were compensations, budgets, you can reprofile funding And the fishers are asking for this. Obviously, we've got a basic budget used for innovation, for upgrading our processing, etc. But couldn't you use some of it for something else? Yes, there are funds for fishing zones, and however, there is expectation that these areas would shortly be restored and be usable again. Most of the fishing zones that are closed only temporarily to ensure that the fish stock can grow back, that we can restore that area over a few years. There is no specific funding for those situations, but for areas that we feel cannot be restored or helped, for a generation or more, such as the cod fisheries, there are sometimes funds earmarked for the fish harvesters there. Thank you.
J'étais minutée, je me suis arrêtée.
I'm stopping, thinking that I've run out of time.
It's 20 seconds left, so it's hardly time to get in a question and answer. We'll move on to Miss Miss Barron for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Minister for being here. I'm very pleased that you'll be here for the full 2 hours, so thank you for agreeing to be here for the full length of the meeting, and to all those who are here as well. My first question is around currently in place, there's very limited funding being allocated to the First Nations caucus as an integral part of Canada's delegation to the Pacific Salmon Treaty process. To allow for substantive First Nation engagement, adequate resources are necessary. And right now we have First Nations that are carrying the financial burden in order to participate in this process. I did send a letter, and it was very recently, I recognize. I'm not sure if the Minister has had a chance, but I know that the First Nations caucus has sent a letter directly asking the Minister if she will direct her attention to this matter and act swiftly to provide necessary long-term and sustainable funding to ensure First Nations are able to effectively contribute to the Pacific Salmon Treaty process that directly impacts, of course, Indigenous rights and title.
Well, thanks for that question. And reconciliation is a top priority of our government, and fisheries reconciliation is an important priority for our department, which is why there is significant funding to enable First Nations to participate in fisheries that they are interested in and may not have had access to before. I'm interested in following up on the member's question, MP Barron, and finding out if there's anything we can do. But between fisheries guardianship, fisheries Indigenous monitoring, Indigenous involvement in science, and access to fisheries, there is a wealth of support, rightly so, for involving the First Nations and Indigenous peoples in the fishery.
Okay, just following that question, because currently the existing funding is $185,605, but the First Nations Fisheries Council is asking for $5 million over 5 years. As you can see, there's a big gap in the resources that are currently being provided. And so just to follow, will the Minister commit to working with the First Nations Fisheries Council to ensure that First Nations, there's over 30 First Nations, are provided with adequate funding to be able to fully participate in this treaty, in this process that impacts their treaty rights?
Well, I'm certainly committed to looking into that particular request, and I'm committed to working with First Nations to make sure we understand their interests in the fishery and satisfy them wherever possible.
Thank you, Minister. My next question is around the PSSI funding. Right now, as you know, we're all seeing wild Pacific salmon stocks dwindling. They're in dire straits right now, and we need to do all we can to protect and conserve this vital population. Currently, I did send an order paper question in which I received a response around the total amount of funding and a breakdown. And on that, it said that $741.3 million over 5 years was the total amount that was being allocated. And if we average this out, now I realize that it's going to vary from year to year, that would mean that we would have, sorry, 1 second, 148 million per year. But the 2021-2022 year, we only saw 15.4 million having been spent. Can the minister speak to this? As we can see, it's a big gap in the amount that's been committed, and it looks like we're way off track on where we should be at this time, and what's being done to ensure that we're getting back on track to have this funding being allocated where it needs to be.
Well, thank you, and I would say we're very much on track. The funding over 5 years would never imply that we would be pushing the same amount of money out the door in year one when we are standing up all of the framework to actually deliver on this funding in the most effective way possible, which actually does mean meeting with First Nations representatives, meeting with harvester representatives, the conservation community, and so on, to know that we are structuring this and creating partnerships so that this money is as effective as possible in meeting the goal of restoring wild Pacific salmon, because of course that is an iconic set of species that we all take to heart and is incredibly important for food and cultural purposes for First Nations, interior and coastal alike, and all British Columbians.
Thank you, Minister. So what you're saying is that people who are concerned about the current amount of funding that's been allocated can have confidence that we're going to see that funding being allocated accordingly and appropriately in a timely manner. As you can see, it's a very small amount that's actually been allocated. So I just want to know that we have that confidence that that's going to happen.
Well, the listeners and your constituents can have confidence that I and the department will do everything possible to make sure that this funding is not just spent, but is spent in a way that is as effective as possible in meeting the targets and goals which have to do with the restoration and abundance of wild Pacific salmon stocks.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll now go to Mr. Perkins for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for coming, and officials. My first question, Minister, is with regard to willing buyer, willing seller. When you attended Committee of the Whole last year, on a number of occasions, you reiterated that that was the policy of the department. And again, in response to a question last week in the Senate, I believe you were in the Senate for question period last week, and Senator Francis asked you a question in the context of First Nations. You said that willing buyer, willing seller is the basis of how you approach the decisions. Is that the policy of the department and yourself?
Yes, absolutely. It is. It creates predictability in the fishery. It allows all harvesters to adequately plan and prepare for their fishing seasons, and it is a basis of conservation that we do not increase access when we accommodate Indigenous interests in having quota, because if we were to add when the access is already fully subscribed, that would constitute a conservation challenge.
Thank you. Last week in response to Senator Dagenet, who asked you questions with regard to willing buyer, willing seller, and the Elver fishery, in response to him, you said that the 14% cut, the temporary, it's temporary 2 years in a row, but the temporary 14% cut to the Elver quota actually came from Elver fishers themselves. Now, the lawyer for 5 of the 8 commercial non-Indigenous Elver fishermen contacted me and said that, quote, that's blatantly false, that 5 of the 8 did not. In fact, they oppose it, that the only Elver fisheries that support that were Elver fishers who don't fish their entire quota. The ones who do fish their entire quota, the 5, opposed it. So help me understand why you would tell the Senate that Elver fishers proposed this when, in fact, the majority of them didn't.
Well, thanks for that. And my understanding is that we reached out to all of the Elver fishers and asked them to participate in a consultation as to how we might move forward with accommodating the First Nations interest in the Elver's fishery. We did that through the association leadership, and what came back to me was a way forward that the Elver fishers were all consulted with. And my understanding is that it actually did consider those who were not fishing their full allocation, and that those were the ones that provided more of this available allocation for the Indigenous peoples than those who were already fishing their full allocation.
Well,
I can go back and check into that.
I would
but
appreciate it.
That was my understanding about how we did that last year.
Okay, well, I appreciate it because my
Yeah.
understanding from the Elver fishers is that it's a flat 14% across. So those who are fishing their full quota are being penalized at 14%. So I'm sure they'll be pleased to know that their cut is actually a lot less given
Well, that
those.
was my understanding, as I said, and we are doing a review of the allocation to First Nations for this coming year.
Okay, thank you. There are, I think, Minister, you've issued 2 more Elver licenses, so that's 11 total, 3 of which are First Nations. So that is, I think, 11% of the licenses have now are made up of First Nations, while the Mi'kmaq are only 2.7% of the population. So what's the level at which you say, okay, that's enough licenses relative to the overall TAC?
So our reconciliation fisheries are not specifically about population quota. They are about our mandate to implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and accommodate a treaty-affirmed rights to fish. What I can say for this year is that there will not be a larger percentage of the total quota going to First Nations, though they will have a larger amount to fish because of how we'll be managing the sustainability of the fishery this year.
Thank you, Minister. On a different subject, the U.S. has set a TAC for Atlantic mackerel of almost 4,000 tons. I understand, I don't think that you have announced a decision yet. This committee has done a report on Atlantic mackerel. Will you allow a bait fishery in Atlantic Canada this year?
Well, my goal is to grow the fish and seafood sector, and that means being precautionary when a fishery is in critical zone, which the mackerel fishery is. It's in the critical zone. So it also is very important for the whole ecosystem because other important fish are depending on mackerel for their health and the health of their stocks. I have been working to ensure that the United States leadership understand that the precautionary approach is incredibly important in managing the stock, and I've had several opportunities to talk to the leadership, in other words, Dr. Spinrad, who is the key administrator for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, to discuss how we can rebuild the stock. And my understanding is that the United States has reduced their quota twice in recent years in reflection of the state of the stock with its age structure collapsing and the egg surveys showing that the recovery at this point is weak.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Perkins. We'll now go to Mr. Hanley for 5 minutes or less.
Minister Murray, thank you as well for being here, and thanks to the Deputy Minister and to the officials as well for appearing. Minister Murray, I'm also going to focus on Pacific salmon, specifically the situation in the Yukon Territory. And you took time, which was much appreciated last summer, to visit the Yukon and engage directly with the Salmon Subcommittee and various Yukon First Nations on the critical state of Yukon salmon. And as you know, we're anticipating a study in this committee specifically devoted to Yukon salmon. But a sense of urgency to address this issue remains after another dismal season last summer. I wonder if you can describe any progress made in advancing the PSSI in general, a bit of an update, and the Yukon component in particular. And I'm interested if you could shed any light in particular on recent progress with the integrated planning for salmon ecosystems, because I note that in particular there's one of these programs for the Yukon River system.
I did go up to the Yukon, spend a number of days there, went into communities like Little Salmon Carmacks, where I heard from elders about the impact on the community of not being able to fish salmon and not being able to have summer fishing camps and not being able to teach the cultural practices to the next generation. And so I very much take that to heart. I have had a chance to have 2 meetings with the Undersecretary of Commerce. That's Dr. Spinrad, of NOAA, who I mentioned previously, specifically about concerns about overfishing of salmon on the Yukon River by the U.S. fishery at the mouth of the Yukon River. With respect to Pacific Salmon Strategy Initiative, that does include Yukon, and funds will be made available for necessary work in Yukon to help to protect and restore the Yukon salmon fishery. I work very closely with our lead official in the Yukon, who accompanied me for all the days that I was there and all the meetings, who also takes to heart the need for us to do more. We're working with the province on the hydroelectric facility that is creating challenges for the migrating salmon in the south of the Yukon River ecosystem. He's very aware of the needs for its support for First Nations monitoring efforts on the river and other work to help recover the species.
Thank you. I wonder if I noticed that Mr. Goodyear and Madam Gibbons have been looking. In particular, is there any information you can provide on the IPSI or integrated planning for salmon ecosystems as regards the Yukon? That have engagement with the Yukon government and the Yukon officials and other leaders already taken place? I know this is a work in progress. It's a kind of a setting up, but I'd be very interested if you can shed any light on that.
So we're in the process now of consulting on the salmon strategies, the planning strategies for the year, and that will go on over the next few months, and then we'll make the decisions that we need to. The minister will make the decisions that need to be made for this year.
And perhaps we could get back to you on the state of the integrated planning for salmon ecosystems program itself.
I would really appreciate that. Thank you. And you mentioned meeting with American officials, including Dr. Spinrad. These types of conversations are really crucial. A number of my constituents are really expressing an urgent need to engage with the Americans on a really meaningful way to try to highlight some of the key issues across the border, including quotas and this problem of relative overfishing compared to the numbers that we now see. And I wonder if you might be open to what I'm hearing suggestions of, kind of a summit or a meeting to bring people together to really try to flesh this out and try to see if we can get some commitments on the American side.
Well, I think that's a very interesting idea and a worthwhile one that MP Hanley that I'll explore further. I did go to someone very knowledgeable in my own personal network about why are we finding the U.S. fishing in such pooled stocks where Canada has shut the fisheries down. My understanding is that the precautionary approach that is built into the Fisheries Act, it does require us to be more precautionary than the approach that the Americans are still taking, which is based on maximum sustainable yield. So my view personally is that the American fisheries science and assessment process needs to catch up to the precautionary approach, and that has been the core of my conversations with Dr. Spenrad, as well as that I have raised that at the World Oceans Conference in Lisbon last June, at COP15 in Montreal, which is about the biodiversity, including in the oceans, and at Impact 5 in Vancouver last month. So I have been raising it as something that I aspire to see, which is a parallel precautionary approach with U.S. Partners in these stocks, and the idea of a specific summit, I think, is an interesting one, and we'll explore that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanley. Thank you, Minister. We'll now go to Madam Debienne for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. So, going back to some of our fishers, I'm sure we had a little audio issue. I hope that was not problematic for our interpreters. Perhaps it was just myself. So, back to our Elver fishers, what the fishers tell us is that they had accepted to hand over part of their quota if they were compensated for it. So this took place unilaterally. 14% of their quota was lost to them with no compensation. So responding to my colleague's question, then you have said something about it, but we can fully understand the fish harvester's concern. We at our office, at my office, we had a number of people come to us to explain that they had made complaints of various natures and that some of them have not received any response from the Canada Coast Guard. Some complained a couple of years ago, some 7 years ago. And some of them are, seriously depressed about this, and I can see why. So why such delay? I see that several million are going into settling a litigation, and I'm saying perhaps that's exactly what this is about. So why so slow in settling matters of complaints and so on at the Canada Coast Guard? To begin with, regarding Elder, allow me to correct myself. We reallocated quota in a proportional fashion, proportional to the fishers' quotas, not based on how much they actually harvested or not. I'd like to really make that clear. It was applied equally across the board to all.
C'est toujours le moyen préféré, mais
willing buyer, willing seller is always the preferred mode, but when there is no seller at a market price, we can't use this as a reason not to attribute the quota to a First Nation fisher. It has to be done anyway, or to a First Nation quota. And I will ask the Commissioner of the Canada Coast Guard to respond to the rest of your question. Yes, thank you, and thank you for the question. I'm not aware of exactly what issues. I think you asked to meet with us. Yes. Oh, good. Well, then that's being planned, a meeting with you. So I have no other comment on those specific files, not knowing what they are, but I can tell you that in our interaction with the unions, this is of the highest importance. We're on very good terms with our unions, and we try to ensure that files move forward as quickly as possible. Sometimes the files are very complex. There's a complaint of some sort, and a number of investigations have to be carried out one after the other, not alongside each other, and sometimes that leads to longer delays. That might be a partial explanation. We have review committees as well within the department whose work is to ensure that we work consistently in the same way and fairly across all cases. So I certainly like to settle things quickly, and I'm ready to work with you on it.
For 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. As you know, in 2019, this committee put forward a report on West Coast fisheries sharing risks and benefits based on a beneficial license model for West Coast owner-operators with sound recommendations that were brought forward to this government as a result. Just recently, myself and my colleagues, Mr. Hardy and Mr. Arnold, all attended a conference in Victoria, the Fishing for Communities Conference, and we heard from fishers, Indigenous and non-processors, researchers, all around the impacts of the consolidation of West Coast fishing licenses into the hands of large, wealthy corporations whose profits siphon funding and resources from coastal communities and local fishers. We heard, as one example, the impacts on Prince Rupert, where we have seen this used to be a fishing hub and still is, but many of the resources and amenities for commercial fish harvesters are no longer available. And so I have asked this before, Minister, and I want to ask again because I'm not seeing the implementation of the recommendations from this report, and wanted to ask the Minister when we'll be moving forward with licensing policy reform that prioritizes local fishers and coastal communities instead of propping up corporate and speculative investor ownership of fishing licenses and quota.
Well, thank you. This is a very important project, and I will reassure the member that we have already conducted preliminary consultations with industry associations based on the committee's report on the West Coast fishery. We've consulted with the First Nations Fishery Council, Fisheries Advisory Boards, as well, and so we're finalizing our approach to further consultations because this is a matter that is very important and affects a great number of people and businesses. And in the meantime, we've been making progress on some other related fisheries recommendations in that report. One is a national beneficial ownership survey to actually identify who does own what on the West Coast, and this is now going through final reviews and will be made public soon. We're conducting technical work to improve the accessibility of license and quota data. We've released a comparative analysis of Atlantic and Pacific licensing policies in 2021 because that's relevant. And we're also planning to improve our socioeconomic data collection and transformation, as well as conduct an analysis of DFO Pacific region policies, practices, and terms of reference for establishing commercial fishery advisory boards. So once we have to get a better handle on data gaps, we'll better understand the issue and a path forward.
Thank you, Ms. Byrne. We'll now go to Mr. Bragdon for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Minister, for being here today and taking the time. And just want to, first off, ask this question out of the gate. Would you agree that coastal communities, fish harvesters, and those whose livelihoods depend upon the health and vitality of our fisheries and our waters, that they are perhaps very well, if not best positions in many cases, to advise the government on proper policy and direction as it relates to preserving the health of our stocks? Would you agree with that, yes or no?
Well, yes, they are a very important component of the information that we seek as we make decisions, because my main priority is to grow the fish and seafood sector on all coasts of Canada.
And Minister, absolutely. And I think we are hearing from coast to coast from numerous harvesters and producers and coastal community stakeholders and those whose livelihoods and very history and lives and generations have lived in these communities depend. And they want it to be there for future generations. All of us want there to be a healthy fishery and obviously healthy waters and clean waters. But one of the things that's been coming to the surface repeatedly, and this is not new to our time here on Fisheries Committee, but this dates back to the early 90s, around the time of the collapse of the cod fishery. And I quote then Minister Brian Tobin, Minister of Fisheries, who said at the time, "There is only one major player still fishing cod. His name is Harp, and his second is seal. And whether it's the East Coast or the West Coast, we're hearing testimony, Minister, that is absolutely overwhelming, that we have a huge challenge in the waters, something that's very discernible, very detectable, and the science, I think, is definitely leading and pointing to this. That is something that we as a government could address now, and that is the pinniped challenge. What, Minister, are you and your government doing to address the pinniped issue on both coasts?
Well, and indeed, my goal is to sustainably grow the fish and seafood sector. In terms of the member's question, I hosted a seal summit in Newfoundland last year that would bring together Indigenous peoples, fish harvesters, scientists, and industry to explore the ethical harvest of seals that utilizes the entire animal and creates more opportunities for Canadian seal products. I committed to more science on the part of DFO. I will remind the member that we simply can't be reckless when it comes to seals. Reckless decisions would risk market access to critical importers of Canadian seafood, such as the U.S., and hurt Canada's reputation.
Thank you, Minister. And no one would advise reckless action on this, but this is not something new to the table. This has been brought forward in reports going back to 1999 to 2002, and even most recently, there was an Atlantic Mackerel Advisory Committee that took place in Halifax just this past March, where we heard from DFO scientists as well as harvesters who overwhelmingly, the data is very clear. In fact, it says in the stomachs of gray seals, for example, in the summer, they found over 80% of the content in the summer was cod and herring. And then in the summer, we're getting stats as high, in winter, I should say, that we're getting as high as 47% of the stomach contents is mackerel. These are staggering statistics, and when the population at the time of the cod fishery collapse was 2.7 million pinnipeds in the water on the East Coast, now that's approaching over 8 to 9 million pinnipeds that we know of on the East Coast. Do you not think that's having a damaging, huge effect on fish stocks on both coasts, and it needs to be addressed with immediacy and urgency?
Well, I just would like to understand whether the member is calling for a cull of seals.
Minister, no one's calling for a call. What we're asking for is for the minister to listen to the key scientists as well as the harvesters whose livelihoods have depended upon this, and look at the measures that have been put in place for a meaningful harvest on coast to coast that will be done responsibly and in conjunction as other allied nations have taken place and done, and we know is even happening off the coast of Washington State as well.
Well, thank you, and that is was the very purpose of having a seal summit, was to have the harvesters, Indigenous people, also the product and market intelligence all come together to discuss how we could increase a responsible seal harvest of this sustainable natural resource. And yes, I do understand that there is an impact of gray seals on our fisheries stock. We are doing the science. Our department has a number of very modern approaches to ensure we are doing the science, and the information collected helps us understand how seals interact with fish and are impacted by environmental changes, and this is considered when assessing fish populations.
Thank you, Mr. Bragdon. Thank you, Mr. Bragdon. Your time has gone over. Actually, I want to close out the first hour now with Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes or less.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In order to keep us on time, I'll have just one question for the Minister. It has to do with the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. There are two issues that seem to be coming up continuously. One is that Canada isn't funding its fair share of the Commission's work. And two, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans isn't committing the budgeted amount to the Commission that you have authorized, and that leaves the Commission, A, short of money to do what it wants to do, B, rather upset with Canada not sort of, maintaining its share of the work and the funding. And three, some suspicions about the DFO and, its sticky fingers when it comes to the allocation for the Commission. Give you some time to respond to all of that, please.
So firstly, I just want to confirm that I support the vital work of the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission in dealing with the invasive species, the sea lamprey eel. I'd just like to assure the member that the funding delivery process to the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission has not changed since its inception in 1956. So, well, I will say that there was a request for additional funding to bring our proportion to meet the additional funding put in by our partners, the United States. And so in budget 2022, we allocated $45 million, which is over 5 years, and $9 million ongoing. So the only thing that's changed in this agreement is that we have added dollars in budget 22 to bring Canada's funding up to the proportion that was established in 1956. So we're now in full compliance with our treaty obligations. I'm proud to grow that commitment and also to be able to count on the great work that the department officials are doing in providing the in-kind science and operations to manage and minimize this invasive species.
So you're convinced then that we are delivering the money that we are promising?
We are delivering the money that we are promising. There is a very small component that automatically is taken by Public Works and by Shared Services Canada for equipment, for computers, and for procurement services. And we will be reviewing that small component of $300,000, I believe, to ensure that it is appropriate given the way the structuring of the operations and science provided by DFO is done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy, for trying to keep us as close to time as possible. I do appreciate that. Our time on supplementary estimate C, of course, has run out. We will now move on to main estimates. Pursuant to Standing Order 814, the committee is beginning its study of main estimates 2023-24, votes 1, 5, and 10 under Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Minister Murray, you have 5 minutes for an opening statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as I mentioned in my earlier opening remarks, I'm pleased to be here with the committee members on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabeg people. I've previously introduced the staff from the officials and leaders from DFO, so I don't think I need to repeat that. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, I appear before the committee today to prepare the main estimates for 2023-24 for Fisheries and Oceans Canada and the Canadian Coast Guard.
Any questions that you have? So, Mr. Chair, for the 2023-24 fiscal year, I'm seeking a total of $4.1 billion in planned spending. This requested amount represents an increase of $124.5 million compared with 2022-23 main estimates, last year's estimates. This increase in expenditures is a result of changes to funding requirements for several existing and new departmental initiatives. And these key initiatives include $314 million for projects related to the Canadian Coast Guard fleet, including new vessels, $89.8 million in new funding to support ongoing recovery efforts from Hurricane Fiona, and $73.1 million to continue our work under the Oceans Protection Plan. It's important to note that $433.4 million worth of decreases in other spending have offset this increase. and this includes a number of planned profile changes or previously approved funding related to Indigenous programs, the modernization of the Fisheries Act, several fisheries funds, and the protection of Canada's nature, parks, and wild spaces. And this is in addition to sunsetting funding for the Small Craft Harbors program from Budget 2021. It's important to address one of the decreases in our main estimates, which is the previously approved $86.8 million funding change for Indigenous programs. While this change appears significant, it's explained mainly by a planned reprofiling of funding from one year to the next and does not reflect a change in this government's commitment to reconciliation. This type of spending varies from year to year, depending on the stage of negotiations and other influences. In this particular case, a large amount of planned spending for the 21-22 year was reprofiled into 22-23, resulting in an unusually high level of planned spending for 22-23 and an apparent decrease in 23-24. Apparent but not actual. So, Mr. Chair, Hurricane Fiona devastated small craft harbors in Atlantic Canada and eastern Quebec. Après le passage de la tempête.
After the storm hit, I joined Cove Head Port Authority President and lobster fisherman Alan Cody in Prince Edward Island, and I saw firsthand how shocking and extensive the damage was at that harbour.
Is doing its part to support the ongoing recovery from Hurricane Fiona with funding to repair critical infrastructure, retrieve lost fishing gear, and help offset some of the costs with engineering assessments so that future infrastructure and harbors can withstand this current reality of climate change anomalies by being more resilient in the build back, because severe storms will probably, unfortunately, continue to be our reality going forward. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, there's no question that the demands on Canada's oceans and marine resources are higher than ever. Because of this, in 2016, our government announced the Oceans Protection Plan, and Budget 2022 set aside a historic investment of $1.1 billion over 9 years, and more than $70 million in ongoing funding to renew the plan and build on its successes.
Ocean Protection Plan is improving marine safety and environmental response on all coasts, with initiatives like the Marine Training Program to help underrepresented groups access marine training. We co-launched the Coastal Nations Coast Guard Auxiliary, which currently has 8 First Nations participating. The OPP has given government the opportunity to partner with Indigenous communities. All of these important investments contribute to keeping the waters safe, people safe on the waters, and the environment protected. And finally, Mr. Chair, you'll notice spending on the Canadian Coast Guard fleet is the largest item in my department's main estimates. This funding,
$314 million, is a combination of new and reprofiled funding that is delivering new ships to the Canadian Coast Guard, while also allowing the Canadian Coast Guard to do the necessary work to keep existing ships operational. This isn't just providing the Coast Guard with the necessary equipment, but also constructing these vessels, and it's helping to provide good jobs here in Canada, on all coasts and in Quebec.
The pandemic contributed to delays and higher costs in some cases. As a result, some projects are not advancing as quickly as planned, and the Canadian Coast Guard has reprofiled funding to better align with the realities of shipyard construction schedules. Mr. Chair, the funding that I am seeking through the main estimates will ensure that my department can fulfill its mandate on behalf of all Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And before I go to questions, I want to remind members that I'm going to have to be very strict on time in this portion, as we want to get to a couple of votes afterwards on the actual main estimates. So we'll start off with Mr. Arnold for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And before you start my time, I'd like to put forward that I've had discussions with all parties, and for the second round of this second hour, Mr. Epp would like to take the final questioning spot to allow the other parties to make sure that they have their questions in. So if I can start my time now.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Minister, and officials. Aquatic invasive species has been at the forefront of some of my work on this committee since I arrived here in 2016. Minister, we've continuously asked for adequate funding to protect against aquatic invasive species in British Columbia, and continue to see a failure on your department's mandate to deliver the needed prevention measures in British Columbia. Has your department worked with Canada Border Services Agency, Environment Canada, and Transport Canada on training so that border agents and officials understand the extreme threat that zebra and quagga mussels would pose to the Okanagan and Shuswap, and actually the entire Fraser and Columbia River systems?
Thank you to the member, and our government certainly understands the importance of protecting Canadian waters and coordinating efforts to prevent the spread of aquatic invasive species. I want to reassure the member that this was a key topic of my meeting with the Canadian Fisheries ministers from across the country in Winnipeg last fall. We really did commit to collectively upping our game on that, as well as working with U.S. counterparts to support us. The 2022 Fall Economic Statement identified $36.6 million over 5 years, starting in last year, the year that's just passed, to expand the aquatic invasive species program that DFO runs. So it will enable us to undertake new activities and work with the provinces who do a lot of this work at the borders to ensure that the protocols are in place and effective. And we do need to prevent the spread of these species for the well-being and health of our ecosystems in the future.
We absolutely do, Minister, and we've seen little action on that. Minister, when the Pacific Strategic Salmon Initiative was announced in 2021, it was announced with defined objectives for the initiatives and associated fundings. Is that correct?
Yes, it had several categories of work that it committed to.
Thank you. Earlier this year, the committee was informed that the PSSI Salmon Habitat Restoration Center for Expertise has been launched with key actions taken to date focused on program staffing and setting implementation objectives. In 2016, Minister LeBlanc promised British Columbia's concrete action to support and restore wild Pacific salmon, but in 2022, your department is still focused on staffing and setting objectives. Why so long?
Well, I will remind the minister that we had a massive, massive emergency in British Columbia, the Big Bar slide, and I would say that absorbed not just tens of millions of dollars, but a lot of science and other talent and capacity in the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And secondly, we have committed to the $647 million of the PSSI. But the first year, we are taking the time to consult as we set it up and direct it towards the outcomes and objectives so that every dollar can be as effective as possible.
When PSSI was announced in 2021, components such as the Restoration Center for Expertise, Harvest Transformation, BC SRIF funding, and increased hatchery production and other investments were identified as part of the PSSI vision. In 2022, we learned that PSSI funds were being allocated to flood recovery in the Fraser Valley. Although it's been clearly unnecessary, this was not part of the original PSSI announcement. Earlier this year, we learned that PSSI funding has been directed to other initiatives not identified with PSSI when it was announced. New components such as the Pacific Salmon Science Data Center and Conservation and Protection International Compliance Program. Minister, which investments identified in the original PSSI announcement are being displaced as your office allocates PSSI funds to new recipients?
None. So we have
Okay.
already funded.
And none, we'll move on. Although PSSI funds are significant, they're also limited. So where are PSSI funds being moved within PSSI to cover the new allocations?
Any of the projects that the member mentioned are about achieving the objectives of restoring and protecting wild salmon. So I expect that what would have been identified as exactly how to do that at the outset will actually be changing as we learn more, as we do the science, as we begin the implementation. So I don't see this as an absolute fixed situation. We need to protect and restore wild salmon, and it'll take a number of, we have a number of years funding to do just that, and we'll continue to work on our plan to be as effective as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Your time is up. We'll now go to Mr. Cormier for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being with us, Honourable Minister. Madam Minister, the upcoming season, the fall, to me, always signals the beginning of the fishery, the opening of the fishery. In my region, I see the lobster vessels heading out to begin their fishing. You know, over the last 5 years, we've been dealing with the whale issue, and I think a good deal of very good work has been carried out on that. Let's keep in mind the fantastic work that fish harvesters themselves have been doing to modernize their fishery. Every year, everything is being done, in my region certainly, which was a problematic one. De-icing is important. The ice stays long in my area, and there have been some challenges with some of the equipment. And we've been promised new equipment. It's nice to see the Judy LaMarche icebreaker in my region for the first time coming into the Caracat Bay. My question is quite simple. This year, Madam Minister, do you foresee, and again, it will be an opening of the fishing season that will be simultaneous, by which I mean that everyone will begin fishing at the same time, all provinces for the snow crab? Thank you for the question. Something positive, I think you mentioned it, is the Judy LaMarche icebreaker now carrying out its work, opening the New Brunswick ports early in the season. We know that it's better if all fish harvesters can begin their work at the same time. And this spring has come in a little earlier than usual, in past years, I mean. The exact date of the opening, I will ask the Deputy Minister to explain that. The opening will be announced. I think that some announcements have already been made in a couple of the regions, and more announcements will follow. All right, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there hasn't been one for this year. The fishery opening, usually the ICE committee is what we call it, meets with a number of officials and fleets and so on and so forth. But anyway, thank you again for the work being done for this year, Madam Minister. My next question, and feel free to answer it or to let your officials respond if you think that better. The crab and lobster permits are more and more expensive. A crab or lobster license can cost 10 million or even 100 million. There are rumors to that effect. And a lobster is really expensive too. The license, my father, may be $70,000, $100,000. Now it's $5 million for most of the licenses. That's what they're going for. Nothing like what my father had. Many people are leaving the region, New Brunswick, recently, and it's as though we simply aren't hearing this at the department. People are hiding, it seems, behind various criteria, residency criteria. For example, in New Brunswick, you want a crab license. In Quebec, you have to live in Quebec for 2 years before getting it. But someone in Quebec who wants to buy a PEI license or Nova Scotia, let's say a crab one, the residency requirement is only 6 months. Because of this, many people from other provinces can get hold of the licenses in our region, and we lose our licenses, and this is highly detrimental for our communities. And the new policy, the owner license holder, is a good idea, ensuring that the people who have the licenses are the people doing the fishing. But that also was to keep the licenses in the communities, and now we see that's no longer the case. We're losing our licenses, and the residency criteria is very damaging, very harmful to our communities. Is your department, Madam Murray, ready to change the residency criteria for New Brunswick, and if so, how?
Merci de cette question.
Thank you for your question. At the outset, let me say that the license market is not set by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. The market is the market, and when the fisheries are doing well, the price goes up. The license price rises.
Harmonizing the residency criteria amongst the provinces. My officials may have some information about that, but from my perspective, that may be something that is set by the provinces themselves. If it's something that is in the control of DFO, we would certainly look at your concern and provide a response.
So briefly, we do have an existing license transfer policy that has been accepted by the industry, and they have not at this point asked to modify that policy, but we are certainly willing to review it should that request come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. We'll go to Madam Debian now for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So let me begin by going back to funding the auxiliary Canada Coast Guard. We're told that there's $314 million that will be allotted to the Canada Coast Guard as part of that to go to the auxiliary group. And let me explain myself. I'm just coming back from a conference, a congress about water, and I shared this concern. The St. Lawrence Seaway is immense. It's can often be a problematic area in as much as there are a number of incidents in the waters of the St. Lawrence Seaway, given that navigating is a complex matter. And often safety specialists must get involved. Very often in Quebec, often the Canadian Coast Guard that is involved. I've met these people, wonderful people, because they're often involved on a volunteer basis. They're passionate about what they do, about protecting people on the waters, and often they have to invest their own funds, $5,000, $6,000 of their own money, and I imagine it's going to cost more and more, given that everything's costing more and more these days. So they invest out of their own pockets to be able to support safety on the waters and those policies of our government. So in this budget, will something be set aside for the auxiliary Coast Guard? I can confirm that they hope so. Yes. The Canada Coast Guard Auxiliary Group is an essential member of our team. We have 4,000 volunteers, as you say, volunteers, and more across the country. With the Ocean Protections Plan, we were able to get more funding because, for example, the ships are now larger and they cost more to operate. We have a contribution plan which allows us to pay them back for their insurance costs and their fuel costs as well when they're training and when they carry out search and rescue or other security operations. And once again, yes, this will allow us to augment our activities. Good, that will be much appreciated given that they are important players, important team members in the St. Lawrence Seaway. So exactly how will this work for the First Nations? Yes, there's a special initiative for the First Nations as well. There's also the Coast Guard Auxiliary Group set up in 5 different geographic regions across Canada. We have doubled our capacity in the Arctic. For example, there's another program that will be very helpful to volunteers, and that's our community vessel plan. There are allotments for that. We've been able to buy small ships that are then given to communities that can use them for safety and security purposes. Well, that's very good news. Thank you. Madam, may I add that I was on one of the icebreakers in the St. Lawrence just a few weeks ago. I spent an entire morning there as they went about opening the seaway, indicating just how important the St. Lawrence is and the communities up and down the St. Lawrence are to what we do. Very important. And thank you, Commissioner, for having assisted me on that trip. Yes, I'm sure it was very impressive. The Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, DPO, intends to fund science and actual involvement of fish harvesters in the science of fish management. How will you be funding this? For example, if you can't fish mackerel, you can't measure how much mackerel you're catching, for example, because herring and mackerel fishers in Quebec have greatly contributed to scientific measurement of the resources, measuring their catch data and so on. So how will they be involved now?
Makes decisions of always using the best available science, which is the data of scientists, it's Indigenous knowledge, and also the experience of fish harvesters and catch per unit of effort. When we're not able to do a comparative trawl, which is the case in some of the fisheries right now as we reestablish the ships that are needed for the Canadian Coast Guard. We have data going back, in some cases, many decades, and so we use those data series as well and pull together the best available science.
Parce que je suis avancé dans mon temps, Monsieur le Président.
I think I'm running out of time, Chair. Wonderful. So getting back to my question quickly, I'm very sorry, I have something in my ear. It's quite intense. I'm not sure what the feedback is about or why I'm hearing it. All right, so we can't compensate fish harvesters who are measuring the resources or in any other way than via the scientific projects at Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So you're saying that the fish harvesters have had this obligation of measuring their catch for so many years, but overnight you no longer need that data?
I'll have to ask you to send that in writing as time has gone over. And I want to go to Ms. Barron for her 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, on January 30th, you received a letter from 16 professors and research scientists who have cumulatively published over 1,500 peer-reviewed scientific papers. They have many decades of experience in science advice processes across various levels of government. And those who signed this letter were expressing deep concerns with a recently published DFO science report regarding the presence of sea lice on wild juvenile salmon and a diminishment of the association with sea lice from nearby salmon farms. They state in this report that this report is flawed and conclusions are unsupported. A couple of examples that they used was that the report included contributors who were almost all aquaculture-focused DFO staff with a mandate to support aquaculture development. A second point, amongst many others, is that the report downplays a large body of peer-reviewed research that has repeatedly demonstrated the relationship between salmon farms and sea lice on wild juvenile salmon. And I'm wondering if the minister can speak to what it is that she is doing to ensure that the process of scientific advice being used in decision-making processes is meeting the very basic scientific standards of credibility.
Well, firstly, I just want to confirm that we have excellent scientists and very committed public servants doing science on behalf of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. That yes, recent science indicates that there is some uncertainty in terms of the risks of the Atlantic salmon aquaculture farms particularly to the juvenile migrating salmon. I was reflecting on the advice by the Canada's Chief Science Advisor in the report of 2018 on DFO science, as well as the current the new science that has come out to show the challenges for wild Pacific salmon. And I think that having a review of our science process consistent with that which was advised by Dr. Niemer is something that I'll be discussing with the officials.
Thank you, Minister. I would agree that there are many excellent scientists that are employed by DFO and doing great work. This is more so focused on the decision-making process and which science is being considered and which is not. And I'm wondering if the Minister could clarify if she agrees with the concerns that were brought forward in this letter by these 16 professors.
The fact that there was more recent science showing that there may be risks from pathogens and parasites to the wild Pacific salmon. The other aspect that I took into account is that these fish face cumulative impacts that are outside of our control, like climate change, habitat loss, in some cases pollution and vessel traffic. So the cumulative impacts mean that I have to manage those that are within my control because the viability of wild Pacific salmon is a critical existential requirement on the West Coast because of its importance to Indigenous peoples, coastal and interior alike, as well as the British Columbia public.
Thank you, Minister. You list some of the impacts on wild Pacific salmon. I agree that fish farms is one component of the impacts. However, you also discussed earlier the importance of us following the precautionary principle. And currently, we do have sound research and evidence that there are harms as a result of fish farms on wild Pacific salmon. With the precautionary principle being considered here, why are we still seeing open net fish farms in our waters that continue to harm our surrounding marine ecosystems?
Well, as the member is aware, I have recently taken a decision not to relicense 15 salmon aquaculture facilities in the Discovery Islands, and our government has committed to transition from open net pen salmon farming on the Pacific coast in reflection of the concerns that she's mentioned. And the plan for that transition is I'm aiming to have that available within the next 6 months or so. We've been consulting very extensively with First Nations, with communities, with the industry, with environmental groups and others on how that plan should be formulated and what it should include. And I look forward to having more discussions on that plan once it's been made public.
Thank you, Minister. I was reflecting on as well on that piece around the importance of a real jobs plan for those communities that are impacted. We know we need to be moving forward at a very rapid pace to, it should have been done long ago to get these fish farms out of the water, but coastal communities can't wear the brunt of the impacts of those fish farms coming out of the water. And so what have you heard to date? What are the options that will be provided to local communities, both in financially and training and alternatives to open net fish farms that eliminate, specifically the alternatives that eliminate interactions between open net fish farms and the surrounding marine ecosystem? What can we share with coastal communities around what that plan will look like and when will it be implemented?
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll have to try and get an answer to that question in writing from the Minister as your time has gone a little bit over. Now, Mr. Arnold, you did ask for Mr. Epp to move further down the line, so I presume I'm going now to Mr. Small for 5 minutes or less.
No, excuse me, no, Mr. Chair. We're asking that the other parties take their slots first, and then we would go to Mr. Epp after the other parties have their round in this second round.
All right. Yeah, okay. We'll go to Mr. Kellaway for 5 minutes or less, please.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair. And hello, Minister, and to everyone here today. My questions are around the Oceans Protection Plan. So in 2016, our government launched the Oceans Protection Plan, and I know it's being reviewed now. So I'm wondering, Minister, if you can speak to some of the successes of the program. In addition to the renewal, though, I understand that the OPP is being improved. I'm wondering if you can speak to some of the improvements.
Well, thank you for that. And as a coastal British Columbian, it was unique and very satisfying to see the government put forward the $1.5 billion investment in the Ocean Protection Plan, which brought together a historic combination of ministries, from Ministry of Transport to Ministry of Fish and Oceans, Environment, Natural Resources, to figure out how we could best protect the Pacific coast. One of the things that came out of that was the reopening of Canadian Coast Guard stations on the Pacific that had been closed in the previous decade. The Ocean Protection Plan was a whole. The reason I call it significant is it was a holistic approach, rather than thinking department by department or problem by problem, which is really was more the conventional way of looking at this. The holistic look at how do we protect the oceans? What are we protecting them from? The amount of marine traffic is only increasing, and that creates the risk of spills. Abandoned vessels create risks to the oceans. Safety concerns in the oceans. So fundamental to doing a better job is improving data on the marine environment. That was a big part of the Ocean Protection Plan. Understanding how oil behaves and breaks down and what are best ways to deal with it under different marine conditions. That Ocean Protection Plan funded over 60 projects to restore coastal aquatic habitats through the Coastal Restoration Fund. So $2 billion was historic. And then we have recently added, it was $1.5 billion, and we have added an additional $2 billion to continue that work. One of the key initiatives that was funded through that I think was extremely significant was to develop an opportunity for coastal Indigenous communities to participate in what is their historic activity, which is protecting the oceans and the mariners in them. So we have funded more than $12 million to over 40 Indigenous communities to purchase search and rescue boats and equipment to be able to participate in marine emergency response of the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary. We co-launched the Coastal Nation CCG, Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary, the first Indigenous-led auxiliary organization with units in 8 First Nations communities along the BC coast. So I want to say that this set of work, which is a integrated approach, I want to acknowledge the leadership in the Canadian Coast Guard for really moving outside of our typical traditional approach and becoming partners with First Nations on all 3 coasts. And lastly, I'll just mention that I had a chance to spend a week in the Arctic, along with the regional director from the acting RDG from the Canadian Coast Guard and from a fisheries branch for the Arctic. And I went to a Coast Guard base and a auxiliary Coast Guard in Rankin Inlet, where the captain of the ship was a young Inuit woman and other Inuit and women on her crew, and just how important it was for them to be able to be part of protecting people and protecting waters through the support of the OPP in the Arctic.
Great. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left?
40 seconds and counting.
Okay. The opposition said I had 5 seconds, but I believe you, Mr. Chair, always. Just quickly, I wonder if you can give us an update, Minister, on our commitment to protect 25% of the marine areas by 2025, the importance of the goal, and I'll probably just stay there because that's about the amount of time I have.
Thanks for that question. And Canada aims to be a global leader in protecting the marine areas. Why? Because we need to do this for our next generations. The impacts on oceans of shipping and other activities is only going to increase, and so by having 25% of the oceans protected, and recently an agreement was signed that it's in the high seas as well. So Canada is well on the way to our 25% target in our coastal areas. But what that does is by protecting the seabed floor from activities that might disrupt it, we restore fisheries abundance, and those fish then spill outside of the marine protected areas and make it possible to grow our fisheries abundance and our fish and seafood sector, which is a very important priority for my ministry and for me.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Kellaway. That was a long 40 seconds. We'll go to Madam Debienne now for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to get back to the protected marine areas. We see very positively the fact that the St. Lawrence Seaway Park is being enlarged, and it goes to the south of that area as well, near me, not to the north, unfortunately. Of course, all the maritime traffic is in the north, the belugas as well, which follow the plankton. They're all in the northern sector of the St. Lawrence Seaway. So that's just an aside, something of concern to us, and I will point it out to the Minister of the Environment. That said, a number of marine protection zones are being opened. However, about 50 petrochemical exploration projects are underway in the Baie du Nord area. And we know that excessive amounts of sound is very toxic to beluga whales, the right whale, and to many other marine mammals, I'm sure. So why are both these things going on at once?
Well, thank you for that question. And in protected areas, Canadian protected areas, there are 4 things that are not permitted. And that those include dumping at sea. It includes drilling for oil and gas exploration. Two other things. So we do have some commitments that invasive activities will not be taking place while fishing, and other activities can take place. So we're in the process. I mean, the Bay du Nord, I don't believe, is in a protected area.
Ce n'est pas dans une zone de protection marine.
No, it's not in a marine protected area, but it's in the ocean where so many mammals and species are living, and they move around, of course. And we know that in the past, even the whale was seen in that area. So we are concerned, and everyone who lives on the St. Lawrence Seaway is concerned. I think that I have run out of town. I don't want to insist. I'm tend to be rather disciplined.
We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've heard it mentioned once already today around the importance of us addressing abandoned and derelict vessels that remain a huge environmental concern along the coasts of British Columbia. We know that these sinking and polluting vessels threaten food security for coastal communities and also sovereignty of First Nations as they contaminate traditional food supply, pollute our surrounding marine ecosystems, are a danger in our waters. They're an eyesore along our coasts, as you know. In January just of this year, we saw a vessel that sunk, that was abandoned, and there was this vessel was reported spilling large amounts of fuel into the water for over a month, and it caused chronic contamination of fuel spilled on the beaches and other valuable ecological areas in a provincial park with no response. The Snuneymuxw Marine Division, which is a nation within my riding of Nanaimo Ladysmith, was not even informed by the Canadian Coast Guard of the incident. We know that there are solutions being brought forward. And will the Minister commit to working with other government departments and First Nations, including that of Snuneymuxw, and finally put into place mechanisms to prevent vessels from being abandoned in the first place, to ensure derelict vessels are not polluting our coastlines, and to respond in a timely manner to mitigate environmental damages that may result?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say that it is only under our government that there has been created legislation to address abandoned and derelict vessels. So that is a huge step forward. The Canadian Coast Guard and DFO has been doing some very difficult and complex work to ensure that abandoned vessels that are at risk of leaking oil into the seas, that oil is removed and that it's cleaned up. If there's specifics about the incident the member's referring to, I'll turn it over to Mr. Pelletier to address.
Unfortunately, I don't have the specific of that case, but I do have to recognize that we did get money through the OPP also to address some of those vessels of concern. We did an inventory. There's about 2,000 across Canada. So we've done a risk assessment. So we're going to address them one by one as resources are available. But it's something of a huge concern that we're putting the right effort into.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll now go, if I have everything correct in my schedule, we'll now go to Mr. Epp for 5 minutes or less, please.
And thank you, Minister, for appearing. I'd like to begin, though, by addressing some questions to Mr. Goodyear. And I'm limited by time, so I'll ask that you respect my questions with some brevity. On December the 2nd, you told this committee that the Great Lakes Fishery Commission's budget, 2023 budget, had been set. In fact, the transcript shows that you said, the budget for the GLFC has been based on the negotiation between the two nations and is set, of course, with the inclusion of the Commission, end quote. Is this correct? characterization of your testimony to this committee? Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to clarify my response from December 2nd. That's the status of the Great Lake Fishery Commission budget. Based on the information that was made available to me at the time, I was aware of the funding set forth in Budget 2022, which was an additional $44.9 million.
Was that your testimony to the committee?
Yes, that was my testimony.
Thank you. I just want to remind the committee that's the first time at the November meeting that a commission budget was not ever set. Next question, is the GLFC's 2023 budget, that's covering the 2023 field season, set as of today? Just yes or no, please.
To my knowledge, the budget has not been set for the GLFC.
So, as you were going before, the Minister of Finance in 2022 did allocate $19.605 million each of the fiscal years through 26-27. It's comprised of $10.625 million from the 21-22 budget, plus the additional allocation of $8.98 million, as specifically expressed as the $44.9 million over the 5 years. So then, all that funding goes to A-base funding post-27-28 from the Government of Canada to the budget, to the Commission. Is this correct, yes or no?
So the funding, as identified by the Honourable Member, 44.9 over 5 years,
Right.
and the $9 million ongoing is correct.
Thank you. How much of Parliament's new allocation to GLFC does the DFO plan to withhold in fiscal year 2024?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. DFO does not withhold funding. DFO maintains funding to deliver sea lamprey control on behalf of the GLFC. And then the remainder of the funding, approximately 11.4 of the $19 million will be provided to the GLFC for its important mandate.
Has that withholding been approved by the GLFC Board and Commission?
Again, DFO does not withhold funding. We simply provide the sea lamprey control on behalf of the GLFC.
So my
at an amount that's agreed upon, negotiated with the GLFC.
So the agreed upon amounts for 2023 have been set because the budget has not been, because the Commission has not met since since November of 2022.
So in response to that question, the funding is available. It's now in the hands of the GLFC to determine its budget going forward. Of course, it's not DFO's business in terms of setting the budget for GLFC, but in terms of funding available, all the funds that are required from a Canadian perspective are available.
Subject to the funds that the Minister alluded to, the $300,000, has that been approved by the Commission? The withhold?
So the question with respect to the funds that the Minister referred to is funds that were provided to PSPC and SSC before it was provided to DFO in fiscal year 22-23. Going forward, we're going to work with central agencies, as the Minister mentioned, to ensure that the entirety of the 8.9 will be provided to the GLFC as identified.
So on what authority did you withhold then for this past budget? Because Parliament passed the budget back in 2022. Parliament supersedes that authority, does it not?
Sorry, which fiscal year are you referring to?
Last year, your note of November 29th to the Commission identified $5.8 million that the DFO was going to unilaterally withhold. And so with that, I'll follow up that it seems that the DFO is in a clear conflict of duties situation. It may even be possible that the DFO's actions on the GLFC's budget represent a breach of its fiduciary duty to the Commission via Canada's appointed commissioners. These are serious and ethical lapses that may violate Treasury Board rules and the privileges and immunities of the binational body as they undermine our credibility with the U.S. partners. Mr. Chair, at this point, I would like to move a motion as follows. Whereas the Department of Fisheries and Oceans appears to be in a structural conflict of interest, conflict of duty situation concerning their relationship with the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. And whereas the Department of Fisheries and Oceans appears to be confusing their role as a contractor of the Great Lakes Fishery Commission with their function as the portfolio administrator or the machinery of government source of the Canada-U.S. Convention-based organization. And whereas the Department of Fisheries and Oceans is providing the machinery of government functions by which funding is provided from Parliament to the Great Lakes Fishery Commission via the Treasury Board. And whereas the full funding allocated in Canada's 2022 spring budget consistent with our obligations under the 1954 Convention on Great Lakes Fisheries, was not fully transferred to the Great Lakes Fishery Commission without holdback and in compliance with the terms of the Binational Convention. Be it resolved that the committee direct the chair to undertake all parliamentary efforts and steps necessary to formally ask the Auditor General of Canada to undertake a governance and conflict of interest duties audit into the Department of Fisheries and Oceans with respect to its role as the machinery of government agent for the Great Lakes Fishery Commission and for the execution of Canada's commitments of the 1954 Convention on Great Lakes Fisheries, and determine if Global Affairs Canada would be a more appropriate agent to provide conflict-free support and to function as the machinery of government source for the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. I so move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ebb. I know I see a hand waving there in the distance. I will ask the clerk if this motion has been provided to members of the committee in both official languages. And I know, Mr. Kellaway, you had your hand up, but I'd like for the clerk to advise us on that first, please.
Yes, the motion has been distributed in both official languages.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Kellaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the member opposite. Given the fact that we have the minister here and that we just received the motion about 10 minutes ago, I move that we adjourn debate.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn debate, which I believe is non-debatable. So I'll ask the clerk to do a recorded vote, please.
Monsieur Cormier?
Oui.
Monsieur Cormier, pour. Mr. Hanley?
Oui.
Mr. Hanley, yay. Mr. Hardy?
Yay.
Mr. Hardy, yay. Mr. Kellaway?
Yes.
Mr. Kellaway, yay. Mr. Morrissey?
Oui.
Mr. Morrissey, yay. Mr. Arnold?
No.
Mr. Arnold, nay. Mr. Epp?
No.
Mr. Epp, nay. Mr. Perkins?
No.
Mr. Perkins, nay. Mr. Small?
Nay.
Mr. Small, nay. Madame Desbiens?
Non.
Madame Desbiens, contre. Miss Barron?
Yay, with the caveat that please resubmit it, so that we can actually have a thorough discussion, informed discussion around this. Thank you.
Miss Barron, yay.
Okay, the motion to adjourn debate or adjourn meeting, adjourn debate is passed. So we'll stay on the order paper for the next meeting and be dealt with at that time. I do want to remind members that we have a hard stop from House Resources at 1:02 p.m. We won't have any resources to run beyond that point. So we should get to the votes and the actual mains because there's only 4 minutes left. I'll allow the minister and our officials to leave at their convenience as we do the votes on the actual main estimates. Okay, we'll move on. I believe Madame Debienne had her hand up.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Merely because I take it that we will receive this motion by email. Simply to check.
Afterwards, or if you didn't already get it in both official languages. And I'd just like to remind everyone that this will remain on the order paper and any member of the committee can bring it up at a subsequent meeting of the committee. Of course, now on the main estimates, we have, as I said earlier, we could have up to 3 votes. In all, 3 votes were referred to the committee in the main estimates. Unless any objection, I will seek the unanimous consent of the committee to group the votes together for a decision. Is there unanimous consent to proceed this way, or do you want each one done separately?
We are good with grouping them, Mr. Chair.
Okay, if we have that, we'll move on. It's shall all votes referred to the committee in the main estimates carry?
On division, Mr. Chair.
On division, shall I report the votes back to the House?
Agreed.
On division.
Agreed? Okay, on division.
Don't
On
come back to the
Thursday, of
House, we have no
course.
money.
Yeah. On Thursday, we will continue our study on pinnipeds. I want to, of course, recognize and thank the Minister and her staff for appearing before committee today, even though they're not in the room now. Hopefully they'll know that we did thank them for that. And with that, I thank everybody for making this such a great meeting today. I apologize again for not being there in person. I want to thank the clerk, the analysts, the translation team, and all the table staff for all their help to make this meeting such a success. Again, hopefully we'll see each other on Thursday. Meeting adjourned.